And we can do present slide. Do I have the right file? Good. Here we are. And do I have Excel here? That's not the file we want. Excuse me. And that one isn't either. I think that is. Oops. Where am I here? That looks better, I think. Good. Okay. Now we can get started. So I hope you are having a good day. It is super cold out there. Dora and I just came back inside. My eyes are still watering. That Weather Channel said it was -9, felt like -13. All I can say is it was really, really cold. Anyway, Dora doesn't mind, and I like it because the where we are, it's a dirt road. Until recently, it's been all muddy. Dora hasn't been able to walk where she'd like to walk, and today the ground's frozen, so she can do whatever. So, pictures for today. People have sent me a bunch, and I try to figure out, nice landscapes and favorite places. But a couple sent me pictures of people, and people are special to us, and a few have reminded me how getting through COVID, getting through your year anyway, whether COVID was happening or not. Uh, People are what matter. The survey that you were asked to complete, that I've stopped collecting anymore. I didn't quite get as many as I wanted, but I've got enough to build your first assignment. Hope to have that posted today. So I've been reading through all of the things you said, and a lot of them aren't surprising. The In surveys that I've done in previous years, when asking students what was the best thing that they experienced, what was the worst thing they experienced, uh, really high on the list of both categories of best and worst was the importance of friends. So the students that had a really wonderful year, happy time, when asked what was the best thing about their term or their year, it was the friends they made and how important the friends are to them. And those students that, when citing what the worst thing was, regrettably, that was not making friends. And it just emphasizes the importance of people. And this year's survey, that some of that stuff came up, and some of the questions that were asked about, your success in making friends, and what's been bad about this year, and so on. Friends, there's a big shift in terms of responses in that regard, and the isolation. So people are important. And so when I'm asking you to send me pictures of things that make you feel good, uh, sunsets and images, and for me, looking at the sea, that makes me feel good. But also, there are people or animals that make me feel good. So this is one of my favorite shots of Dora from last fall, and this was just after Hurricane Dorian came through, and it was pretty wild day going through watching that storm, and it was hitting us straight on because we're right facing the sea, um, and thankfully no damage. And she wanted to get out exploring and see what was there. So anyway, she's down here beside me on the floor, uh, sticking by me. So this was important to me, and it's one of my favorite shots. But here are two interesting ones that students sent, and they again resonated with me. So this is Nick. Nick was the first person to send me a picture. And he sent me several, and I said, "Sorry, Nick, I can't post those. They will scare people." Nick has cystic fibrosis, and his lungs were deteriorating to the point he could barely breathe. He had, I think he said, 10% breathing capacity, and the only way he had survived was a double lung transplant. And 2 years ago, I think he was airlifted to Toronto to have the surgery, and this is uh, he must have spent ages in ICU, and this is him after that. Probably no chance to get out and have a haircut like me during the first few months of COVID. Um, but he's ecstatic. He's happy because he's got his life back, and so now he's back into school and he's getting on with his life. Um, so for him, that was an important turning point, and it just you can go through major crises and you can still recover and be happy. And all the pictures he sent me were happy, happy ones, and it made me feel good. There's a lot of hope there. The other was Noah. This was just after the oval opened. So if you're in Halifax, there's a skating oval that I know lots of people that were asking, when's it going to open? When's it going to open? They love it. I don't skate, but I know many people that do and love this. And skating at the oval, especially at night under the lights. And so this is Noah's wife. Um, and they're, I think, first evening out at the oval. Yeah, special person, special place. Made Noah really feel good. And so send me these things. I think we need these reminders of feeling good. Uh, the other thing in the survey I should mention, and feeling good, and I've mentioned this before, I think, the biggest fear, and this is the first time I've asked this question with a winter class, is overwhelmingly about grades, maintaining scholarships, that sort of thing. And they're to help put you at peace of mind. If you do your quizzes, if you do the tests, even if you don't do exceptionally well on the tests, and if you do the assignments, when you merge all those things together, you're going to do just fine. You're going to get a very good grade. I mean, for those scholarship students, it isn't an issue of passing. It's, are you going to get an A? There is no reason why you can't achieve that and without killing yourself or stressing yourself out. And we'll try to find ways. Right now, I'm working on the assignment, how to make them less stressful than they were, but do the same types of tasks. And hopefully by the end of today, I'll have some stuff posted, if not by tomorrow anyway. So the assignment you can get into over the weekend. Mentioning that, the assignment's all in Excel, and your first three assignments are solely Excel stuff. Maybe the first four, almost all the assignments are strongly Excel based, and that scares students. So that's why I'm working on something different to help you through that. The but we'll be doing stuff each class, and I'd ask you to go after class as soon as you can, especially at least the same day if you possibly can. Go back and repeat all the tasks I did in the lecture. So each step I went through, try doing the same thing, sort of work along with it. So look at the slides or whatever it says, did this and did this and did this, and see if you can repeat that. If you can, those activities and those actions will move deeper into your memory and it'll be easier for you to do. And once I get that assignment up, and it's going to cover last class and today's class. So those two classes together are all you need to know to do assignment one, for the most part. A couple of commentary things, you need a bit more, but the mechanical stuff we'll have covered in the two classes. So you should be able to do it over the weekend, and then you can start asking me questions. And as I mentioned past class, a little while back, I'm going to try to ensure that I've got a sufficient time in Wednesday's time class that we are going to use the beginning of the class to address issues to do with the assignment. But we'll get to that. Anyway, on with the show. So last day we got into Excel, that we created a file, we protected the original data. We used a function called a table to format it differently, but it also embeds certain types of properties in it that make it easier to work through, and we'll be using that table today. we started making our data easier to use. So we want the data to be intuitive, that we can look at it and know what's there, that we don't have to think hard, we don't have to go and look up things and so on. So it's you should be able to just quickly see. If you have to go and double check and what does this mean, what does that mean, then maybe you need to put a little more effort into revising the way the data is presented, because you want it, um, you're going to interact with it and respond to it. And you need to be totally at ease with it. It's just not mindless numbers and stuff that's in front of you. So we did that by renaming the variables so that the names made sense to us. We recoded the values of the variables so that they made more sense. So taking numbers, number 7, what does that mean? Oh, that's Nova Scotia. So say Nova Scotia, don't say 7. And that we were doing that with an exact match. And VLOOKUP is a good tool for that. Sometimes you need to use an if statement as well. But between if and VLOOKUP, usually we can transform the values so that they're easier to interpret and understand. The other is don't get yourself confused with too much detail. There's so much there that you could look at. That's my problem in the assignment. I'd love to examine all the variables, and I've been exploring it. And there's some neat things in there. From my perspective, probably doesn't matter to you, um, that I like playing with numbers and playing with data. But restricting your data set to something manageable, that's really only the important things, so you don't get distracted. That's my problem, is I keep wanting to look at things that maybe are not going to be part of the assignment. The other, though, is we can get distracted by too much detail. And this will come up. And even at the end of today's class, I'll point out one thing that bothers me in terms of too much detail in the way you actually write a number. But sometimes we don't need a lot of detail because we're looking at general patterns. And so we don't need to know what salary someone earned. We just need to know, is it a low salary or a high salary or a middle salary? So maybe we group the data and we take numbers and put them into categories. We turn interval or ratio data, we recode it as ordinal data. It's a sequence, low to high. So it's ordinal. And ordinal data is often easier to read than interval or ratio data. Ratio data may have too much detail for us, stuff that we don't need. So and I talked about from a data science, data dictionary is critical at the start, that protecting your data in many different ways, not just for you to modify it, but to make sure that you're not running into any privacy concerns in terms of things. Checking your data from the survey, scanning it to make sure. Well, last year's class, there was someone, I merged last year's and this year's class, made reference to specific instructors, but they were positive comments about people. So I left their names in. But if they'd been negative comments, I would have removed their names. That I'd feel that was inappropriate. Compliments to people, no, I can accept that and leave that in. That we also noted key issues to do with data quality, and this will be a recurring issue. And I can't emphasize enough that quality doesn't mean there is good quality and bad quality. It's black and white. No, there's always some defects, some things that aren't perfect or you'd like them to be done differently. But if they're small, they're manageable. And if you can find a way of coping with that and adjusting for it, you move on and get your work done. That we saw data last class for fatalities with COVID in the United States, and we realized the daily data is not reliable because of the way different states report their data. But weekly data should be just fine. So there is quality to do daily analysis, but do we really need to? If we're looking for trends, weekly is good enough, or just average per day, a moving average. Uh, that some way of sort of smoothing those things out. So we can address some quality problems by making adjustments. That some people are of the mind that if they see anything wrong, then they say, fake news, garbage, can't use it. No, there's always huge amounts of value there, but you've got to be very careful on what you can use and how you can use it, what you can't use. So today, we're going to start out looking at a single variable and trying to understand that data. So we're going to drill into one variable and look at things and ways of describing it. And then over the next class, we'll move into looking at multiple variables at the same time and looking for relationships. But we're going to start out with some very basic things. And this is as far as assignment one goes. So I'm going to use the same data set from last class, and we'll work through that. And if you recall that last time we reformatted the data to make it easier to read so that I could then look at a record like row 10 in that data set is student 472. That's just a label, an ID. It's a first year student studying business from Nova Scotia, female. She doesn't know what her highest level of education is of her parents. And she speaks English at home. And previously, that data was all cryptic because it was all numbers and things. But now we know we can understand it, and it was easier to read. That so this is the record that I was talking about that was in that data set there. Now, what I'd like to start doing is just exploring the data by using filters and sorts. So I've got in this data set 800 different records, and maybe I'm going to start to look for at the start what's a high value, what's a low value. Maybe I'll want to look at filtering. I want to look at the values for business versus the values for arts or the values for science. Sorting and filtering are some of the very first tasks we do before we try to summarize the data. And so if I wanted to just look at business students, if I look at my data, if I went up to program, and I'll do this in a minute, you'll notice with each of these ones in a table, it's got this little down arrow box. And when you click on it, you get a bunch of things. And there are several things. Let me go through these. There's one, it does a simple sort. So with program, I could sort the programs from A to Z. So it would have arts, business, invalid was a category we had, and science, I guess, would be sorted alphabetically. If they were numbers that we'd have, it would say sort smallest to largest. We'll see that in a second. This one, for the life of me, I don't understand why they called it this, sort by color. And you can do that. You can have color-coded boxes and then sort by that. But this allows me to do more custom sorts. I can sort multiple things at the same time. And we'll look at some of that. The other thing is I've got filters. And with program is a text variable. It's a nominal variable. So it has text filters. With numbers, we have number filters, and we'll see these as we go. And then finally, I've got a listing. These are all the different values. Ooh, sorry, it shouldn't say engineering and other. This is from an old slide. The way we recoded it, we had just invalid in science. So forgive me there. I've got to fix that. Okay, so, and maybe I just want certain groups. Let me just go to my data. Let's see what we get. So here was my grad expectations. Hello. Oh, just slow to respond. Here we go. And I hope you can see the detail here. So if I went up to program, now this is coded the way it doesn't fit my, so I've got these things before, and I can do filter by color because these, I've got blue and white, blue and white, blue and white. I can actually select only the blue ones if I wanted to. I can filter using text, and that equals a certain name or begins with a certain letter, contains a certain word in the phrase, and I can sort them from A to Z and the like. I just want to look at business students. So I could go, simple way is just go in here and select business students, click OK. So here are all business students and data I've got on them. And suppose I want just international students that are in business. So there I've got a filter on, and I don't know if you can see it, but right up here, I've gone from an arrow to a funnel. It goes in and goes down like that. And that means that I have filtered things down into a smaller group, and it's active on me. So if I go over here to home and I just wanted international, I could go down somewhere in my list here. Here it is, outside of Canada. And I click OK. And so now I've got just business, just outside of Canada. If I wanted only females, I could go over here and say, just give me females. And so now I've got females. My data set's getting smaller and smaller. That you'll notice these ID numbers now, there's big gaps between them, like because a whole bunch of values I've skipped. So I've got business outside of Canada, and that I've only got females. And here's salary. It's a number. I could go and pick off the values I want, or I could use a number filter. Like suppose I could have ones greater than or equal to or less than, less. If I wanted those that didn't have silly numbers, I might say I want to go between 20. Yeah, it's not working on my keyboard here. Hold on. I got a new keyboard because mine um, laptop keyboard is going busy. Keys are dying on me every day. So I put in the numbers. Don't put any commas in there, which may mean it's tricky to read with big numbers. Is that 20,000 or 2,000 or 200,000? It's easy for us to make mistakes. This, I think, is 120,000. Yeah, I think it's got the right number of zeros. And I click OK. Look at salary here. I should get rid of that 200,000 that's up here. Here's a 4,000 down here. Here's an 800. So some of these ones should be disappearing. Boom, they're gone. Whoa. I started out with 811 students. Now I must have what, 15 or so? These are female international business students that expect to earn between $20,000 and $120,000. So it's a very small subgroup, but I can filter and get down to these. That, but it's annoying. You forget these things, so you better be careful. You may want to clear these before you do anything else. See, there's a thing that says clear the filter from gender and home. And I frequently forget to clear filters. And I must say, these little arrows aren't good enough to remind me. I wish it was red or yellow or something, some warning to say you've got a filter on here, because it's very easy to forget that the filter's on. It's a common mistake students made in their assignments. The other thing you could have done in here in this filtering process, it said filter by color. So let me click on that. Oh, that's not working. Let me just try it on salary then. This one gonna work? Number filters, no, not working the way it should. That's strange. Normally it should allow me to go and do the all the filters at multiple ones at the same time. We'll see that with sorts. For example, if I wanted to sort things, these ones are easier. Oops, sort by color. Oops. I can do, as I said, sorting from smallest to largest. I can also do a custom sort where I do a whole bunch of sorts at the same time. The sort works differently. Let me just show you. If you do them one at a time, you have to be careful. Like, let's suppose I sort programs from arts, then business, and so on down, and I sort home. I'll do it alphabetically. Alberta, British Columbia, so on down, and go across. Salaries, maybe I want to sort uh, largest to smallest, like that. Again, these ones, I now have little things here that tell me a little bit about the sort, okay? But um, this tells me a sort's taken place, fine. But notice here, after I sorted the salary, look at the home. It's no longer in alphabetical order. Programs are no longer in alphabetical order. Whereas filter, I can layer filter on filter on filter. I can't do that with sorts the same way. So what I could do is I go and I do sort by color, and it says custom sort. Okay. Right now it says I'm sorting by salary from largest to smallest. Suppose I wanted to do that as well with business or by program. It's going to sort program alphabetically, A to Z. And now has it really done that? These are sorted, but I have trouble sorting the programs here. Let me go back and look at that again. So it's sorting the numbers first and the programs second. Maybe I want to sort programs, look at all the art students and sort them, then look at all the business students and sort them. So what I can do is take this program thing and move it up. So it now says program and then salary. And if I add a level, oh, it's squeezed in the middle. I'm going to, okay, let me put home as my next one. And I'll do it A to Z. So what do we get? Art students from Alberta, salary sorted largest to smallest. Here's art students down here. I'm looking at these ones from New Brunswick, and they're sorted from the largest expectation to the lowest one for New Brunswick. So custom sorts allow me to sort on multiple things at the same time, which can often be very helpful in exploring some of your data. Let me get back to what I'm supposed to be telling you about. So I did filters like a range of values I just showed you, and we've just done this these sorts of sorts here. And the sorts I like doing primarily to see split my data into groups, and I find that helpful in chunking things. So I'm looking at the business students separate from the art students. But with the numbers, I like to know smallest to largest. And so as it was mentioned here, like look at these smallest values, largest values. So let me go back here to my data. And I'm going to go back, and I can't reverse my sort easily. Take it back out like I could with clearing filters. So let me just take some of these ones out. I want to take out that one, take out that one. I just want to look at salary, largest to smallest. Okay. If I'm looking at a numeric value, generally I'd like to know how are they dispersed? What are big numbers? What are small numbers? So this one I've got largest to smallest. I had students reporting in the survey they expected to earn $650,000 560, 550. It may be they just had one zero too many. Maybe this is 65,000 or 56 or 55 or 17,500. I don't know. These are some strange numbers. I've got 800 students here. So if I'm thinking where's the middle, it's probably around number 400 in the list if everybody told me things. So around 400, I'm around 50,000, 45,000. Okay, those are middle values. And let me scroll down to the bottom. And I'm getting down to some low, low numbers. These are very strange. Look at these. 2,000, 3,500, 500, 800. Are you crazy? Zero. Ah, down at row 753, and now it's going to be blanks below that. So obviously, a lot of students didn't tell me how much they were going to earn. About 60 students didn't give us any input at all. So doing a quick sort is a quick way of looking and seeing, are there strange numbers that are too big, strange numbers that are too small, and I can sort of think about where's the middle of the pack in that data set. I've done no calculations, no fancy things. It's just putting things in an order. Yeah. And this is one of the strange ones for me, 9,450, so precise. How'd they get that so accurate? But most of these are rounded off to the nearest 5,000. And I can understand those chunks of 5,000. Where are some of the other strange ones that, 40,000, then it went to 45,000. I'm looking quickly at patterns. I wouldn't be able to see these patterns if I was just looking at the numbers. By sorting them, um, it's got, in a sense, less clutter because I'm seeing the same number over and over and over again clustered together. So they're just simple devices, but they're very important to getting a basic understanding of what your data set looks like. Um, it flagged some things for me in terms of data quality issues. The survey that uh, you completed asked how much did you earn last summer? And to try to prevent some of the data quality issues, the program I used to build the survey, I could put in restrictions. I put in a barrier that said you could not report a summer salary more than $30,000 because I didn't think it was realistic to earn more than $30,000. If you look through the data set when I posted, one of the students a year ago, when giving final comments, said it was unfair to put a cap at 30,000 because he was not allowed to put his real summer earnings in there. He works as a lobster fisherman and he fishes during the summer months and then comes to school. That and during his fishing season, he earns more than $30,000. His season's about 6 months long, and they uh, uh, he's an outlier though. So even if he put down 30,000 or he put down 60,000, we would have ended up seeing that's an unusual person. And uh, I think you'd agree that's not the typical student, fits into those sorts of categories. Nice earnings, though. So one of the other neat things I like, it comes up in a table, is this thing called a total row. And so if I'm in my table, that while you're in the table, if I was out of the table, let me just get out of the table and you'll see something happen here. Let me go over here. Now I'm out of the table. Okay, I clicked the cell that's not in that table. Look at the ribbon along the top. The ribbon is this list of things here that are very small. It says File, Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, View, Help. When I click on a value inside the table, I get the same thing, but you'll notice there's one called Table Tools, thing that says Design. So within Excel, when you are in certain portions or using certain functions, if you're building charts if you're building working with tables, that and a special type of table we'll get to next class or 2 classes from now called a pivot table, then you'll get other menus that become visible to you. And so this is a menu called design that is only for working with the table. So I could make it look different. I could make it look green. I could go back to what it was. Let me just undo all of those. I don't want to change all my colors around. I think that was where we were. That it has various sorts of things that we can get into. One of them, if I want to get rid of the table for some reason, I can convert it to a range. That's just a plain vanilla table like we had before we inserted a table. So I can go backwards by doing that. That one of them is here. I'd like to have a total row. Now, when I click that, it threw me to the very bottom of my spreadsheet. This is row, it was 812. There are 811 data values, but the first row is a list of labels. That so 813 becomes the next row below it. And it's just blank. There's nothing special here. So what's going on? Well, if I went to salary and clicked on it, it now has an arrow. So I can pick that guy and it gives me different things, different functions. These are the most common ones people might use, but I can also access a zillion other functions if I needed them. How many students told me what they expected to earn? What's the count? 752. Okay. So, as I said, I've got about 60 students that didn't tell me. On average, how much did they think they were going to earn? $52,914.80. So I can quickly find the average just by this row here. I could ask myself, well, what was the maximum? That was the 650,000. What was the minimum? That was a 0 that we had in there. So this is a quick way of looking up things for my numeric variables. With text variables, it's more limiting. We'll get to them in just a minute. Make sure I do my slides in sequence here. So there, I just found that average salary. And now we knew that there were some funny numbers. So I could go back and use my filter. Let me go and look at my filter here. So I've still got salary up here. Now it's still sorted. Let me just, it's not going to let me get rid of the sort. I'll just leave my sort in here. But if I wanted to filter, I want to get the crazy ones out of here. So before I looking at just 20,000 up to 120. Take out the odd ones. And now it's changed my answer here. It's filtered out the blanks that were there previously in the little numbers. And it now says the average of 51,000. Not much different. It seems that the strange numbers that were too big and the strange numbers that were too small might be balancing each other. But sometimes when we trim off the ends, we get a very different result. And you may want to do that. You know that they don't belong. So this is a simple way of being able to do that without manually having to pull stuff out of the way. What else can we do? That let me clear that filter out. Make sure I do that because I want to do some other sorts of things. I want to look at some other items. So let me clear the filter. All right. I'm actually going to do one other thing here. These IDs were smallest to largest. I'd like to get my data set back to the way it was before. And that's why IDs are always helpful. Because if the IDs are set up smallest to largest, even if they're gaps, it allows you to get back to your original data set. And I hope that works. So sort smallest to largest. And now I'm back. I know it's proper because it goes blue, white, blue, white, blue, white, blue, white, the way it should. Okay, so this is my original starting point that I had here. I'd like to get down to the bottom, that bottom row again. And I'm going to look at ID. Now I know from here that I had 811 students. Let me just double check. Count. 811. Everybody had an ID number. Good. What are some of the others, though? The survey asked, when did you start at St. Mary's? What year? You can already see there's a blank up here. Somebody didn't tell me. How many didn't tell me? Oh, 802 told me. So 9 of them didn't. I don't know why. Why wouldn't you know when you started? That they knew a whole bunch of other things. Look at this blank. It's got other sorts of things all the way across. That um, how many told me their program? Okay. Oh, they all did. That's curious. Everybody did. Nobody left it out. Hmm. Program 2. What happened here? Oh, no. 803 told me their program. Remember this? I recoded it. And blanks got recoded. Where's a blank? Um, should I have one here? There's one. Here's a blank. Got recoded as not applicable. Be careful. Now that I've recoded my data, what I knew was a blank before, and we had just a small number, we had 8 blanks, have now been recoded as not applicable. And so now I've got a value for them. So I've got a value, even the blank ones are now given a value. If you look at some of the others that are crazy, look at this one. Remember gender? How we cleaned it up so blanks stayed blanks? Watch what happens. How many told me their gender? 665. Small number. Um, and this, I presume, would be 665. It's 811. This blank here, before, Excel treated a blank like a 0. So it thought this variable was a number, and a blank it treated as one type of blank. In the if statement, I said if it's a blank, make it a blank. I don't know if you can see this. If this is a blank, then keep it a blank. This is now a text blank, and it counted it. It's invisible, but it's counting it. Again, watch out what's going on. It can do strange things to you. This caught me by surprise. I didn't realize it would do this. It was only when preparing this example 2 years ago for students that I realized that how Excel might recode sorts of things. But look at some of the other things. These were survey questions from the beginning of the survey to the end of the survey. I've got 803 told me program. How many told me where they lived? 801. Oh, a few less. How many told me about their salary expectations? 752. I lost a bunch of people here. With their gender, I only got 665. How many told me what language they speak at home? 666. Okay, and parents' education? 668. So these were questions towards the very end of the survey. And it seems they didn't answer them. And they're all different. Some of them, they may not know the answer, may feel uncomfortable giving me the answer. Why would they be uncomfortable about answering these, but not feel uncomfortable about telling me things back here, or attitudes about finding a job? What do we got for this one? 803 again. Any thoughts? What's going on? What's happened here? Oh, good. People are still here. A little more personal. That can be some of it. And personal questions are really hard to get people to answer. But Tegan got it. It's fatigue. How many times do you, hey, this is too long. I got better things to do. And you sign out of the survey. You just sort of jump to the end and hit submit. That be careful. If it's a really important question, don't put it at the end of the survey. Put it at the end. Your response rate's going to be lower. And so you've got less data, but you also don't know, are people that answer all the questions, are they different sort of people than those that don't answer all the questions? And they probably are. They're different. They have different attitudes. Are those differences important for what you're trying to study? Don't know. Um, but uh, it is a problem. And someone has to be the last question. Someone has to be the first question. You've got to be careful. The other that sometimes happens, there are a whole bunch of strategies to survey design. I'm not going to get into it, but I can think of one survey I can remember seeing years ago in the media that asked a whole bunch of questions about the government's debt situation, how much money they owed, and so on and so forth, that tended to scare people about the financial situation of the government. And then at the end of the survey, they asked, is the government doing a good job or not? They set them up. It was a biased result. If they had put that question about the government at the start, they would have gotten the sort of gut feel of people's view towards the government. Maybe they don't think an awful lot about the government's performance, uh, but they got the first thing that came to mind if they put it at the beginning of the survey. By putting it at the end, and because they had structured a whole series of very negative questions, the government got very bad reviews. Uh, and there it's being influenced by where they position it in the survey. So there are some of these other things to think about when we're thinking about data quality. If it's coming out of a survey, we can structure the questions to get better answers and worse answers, or biased answers. We have to think about it. Uh, a lot of the time when you're consuming data, you don't know the details of the actual survey, so you can't really judge those sorts of things, but be cautious. So I've got those. Where am I in terms of time? So we've done that. We've done that. Um, let me look at, yeah, and we'll look at different methods for doing this. But generally, when I'm drilling into data, I'm interested in comparisons, because whatever type of data I'm studying, some groups are different from other groups. I want to know how different they are or how similar they are, and then start wondering, why are they different? So this was a data set that shocked me. Okay, um, that, and we'll get into it in a different fashion, an easier fashion, a little bit later in the course, in another week or so. But so, let's suppose I was looking at salary expectations. So let me go back to this one and look at average. Okay, and the first thought I had was, oh, okay, I'll do simple comparisons. I might look at program. So I can do my filters. Let me just look at business students. How much do they expect to earn? And check that salary figure down here to see how it changes. So a little bit lower. It's down to 52,000, a little bit lower than it was before. So just business students expect to earn 52,000. That what about art students? Well, I could go and click them and click OK, and they expect to earn 49,000. Ooh, okay. So they expect to earn less than business students, about $3,000 less. But well, we can already see up here we got some strange, like, come on, there's an art student that put in 0, someone that put in 15,000. These are silly numbers. Let's clean out ones that we don't think might be valid. So I'm going to do some filtering. I'm looking between 20, which is lowest possible salary at minimum wage, full time. So I don't want to include graduates that have gone back to school again and aren't working full time. I'm looking at ones that expect after graduation they're going to be working full time, uh, and what would they expect to earn? And I'm stopping at 120 because the ones beyond that, I think they're crazy. They're not typical students. So getting those out of the way, okay, there's my average for arts is 47,700, somewhat lower. Probably I've got some strange big numbers. And what did it look like for business? Go back here, click on business, and theirs is somewhat higher, 52.4. So now there's a difference of closer to $5,000, not $3,000 between arts and business. So you can see how we've got to think about the question and potentially do some filtering on it. That you might, I'm just curious, I haven't looked at this one. We have lots of international students in business. Even in 2010, we had a very large number, whereas in arts, we didn't. So let me just take them out. So I'm going to take everybody else. Okay. The international students were making the business number somewhat bigger. Um, that, whoops, and for the arts, what did it do to that? It made it, again, somewhat bigger. If I take them out, I'm still got the same sort of difference of about $5,000 between the two, but it shifted somewhat. That these numbers aren't precise. We'll talk about that later. Are these differences enough we should worry about? We'll discuss some of those issues later in the course. But I'm just exploring it. I'm asking what if, what if, what if? And that's the way I tend to start out. I go at it in a very unstructured fashion, just asking myself some questions and seeing are there anything that's unusual that's going to start popping up. So the next sort of thing that we start to do after we've done this initial exploring is we um, we'd like to summarize things, condense things down, because it's overwhelming looking at all this data. And I've already started looking at simple summaries. I've looked at averages of subgroups. So there are some things like summaries, number summaries, and we'll talk about that next week. But very often when we're summarizing, I don't want to go that far. I'd like to cluster the data together, but without make it less granular than it was before. Just like when I was grouping it with a VLOOKUP, and I looked at very low, low, medium, and so on up. And that when you aggregate your data, aggregating means combining, summarizing it, that uh, we summarize it generally in a table that we call a frequency distribution. I'll show you one of those. And then we look at them graphically. And in statistics, they have a special name. They call it a histogram. So we'll get to this. So this starts getting into some basic statistics, and we're going to do some of that. You'll see some of this stuff in a formal statistics course. But we're not going to, they tend to get down into the weeds, a lot of detail. We're going to look at it at a much higher course level, but just to give us a good feel for things. So in Excel, they've got some statistical functions in a little add-in. If you did Quant 1, you use Solver. That's an add-in for Excel. This is another add-in for Excel, and we add it in the same fashion. So if I go to Excel for add-ins, I go up to File, the top here, okay, and I go all the way down to Options, and down in the list of options, it has add-ins. So I'll pick that. Come on. Oh, there it is. And I'm looking. I don't. There's all this clutter. I've never understood why they've got all this junk in the screen. Because all I want is this down at the bottom. Okay. Excel add-ins. Go. And if you did Quant 1, you clicked on the Solver add-in. I'm going to put the Analysis Toolpack add-in. Don't worry about this one here, the VBA add-in. Um, we are not using Visual Basic. I put it in, and what happens is when I go up to the Data tab, if you did Quant 1, you'll be familiar with this. There, I've got Solver sitting up here, and I'm going to have a thing called Data Analysis coming up there. So let me go and work with this guy. But before I do, let me just, I want to clear my filters. Any others? Because I'm going to forget to do this. Clear that filter. Okay, so I got all of my data back again, all my rows back. So I'm going to go up to Data Analysis. And in it, it's got a variety of different procedures that hopefully they may show you this thing called ANOVA, called Analysis of Variance in a stats course. We're not going to look at it. There's one called Correlation. We are going to use that one. There's Descriptive Statistics. Next class, we'll look at that one. We're not going to get into these guys. Today, we're going to look at the one called Histogram. There are others having to do with moving averages. There's one called regression. We're going to use that one a lot in another couple of weeks. And a whole bunch of things that have to do with tests, t-tests, that you'll use hopefully a lot in a stats course so that you don't have to work all the things by hand. But before I do it, let me go back to my slides. So these are the steps for putting it in, and I'd ask that you try doing that after class. And if you run into problems, let me know, and I'll lead you through it again. So this is what I mean by a frequency distribution. I created groups before using VLOOKUP of very low salary, low, medium, high, very high, unrealistic. Now with this table, I had it at 100,000. I can never make up my mind as to what to put my top end at. And a frequency distribution is a tabular summary. So this sort of looks like lookup table type material. If I then add in how many fit into each of the groups, that we call a frequency distribution. So we're looking at how is salary distributed across the groups. We'll see in a second that sometimes it looks like a bell curve. Doesn't always, but that is a common pattern. And this one you can start guessing. If you're thinking of bell curves, most of the students had medium salary expectations. Some were a little bit low, some were a little bit high. A small number were very low, a small number were very high. That tends to get the same sort of thing. Ugh, MacBooks. I don't use a Mac, so can never remember. Google it. That there's probably someone in the class that's already figured it out. But with Macs, with some of the add-ins, they aren't automatically there. They have a different sequence of steps. I know when students would come by my office, I could usually find it. That's it. It's under tools that they have these sorts of things. It's organized differently. And I don't know with Office 365 if it's organized differently. But raise those with me. I've got to find those things and post that advice to you because these are questions I get every time. I forget about other ways students are doing it. But back to Malcolm's question, this really is like a bell curve sort of thing, the way things are coming up. And we'll get to that when we get it in a graphical fashion. This summary that's here, I did it manually. Well, not quite. There is a trick within Excel that I found to do this sort of thing for me, but it's not, um, it doesn't sort of structure it that way. That um, So, going through doing VLOOKUP, creating categories, putting things in, counting how many are in each category, that's a lot of work. So the histogram function gives me a way of trying to do that automatically. And then there's another method that's even better that I'll show you later. In part, I'm showing you histogram because many people think that's the best way of doing it. In Excel, it's a very clumsy tool. Uh, there are better tools within Excel for doing it, but people don't seem to recognize alternate strategies. But we'll show you what I find is a much nicer, simpler way. Uh, but when you take stats, they'll probably do it this way. Okay. Um, so I'm going to group the data. How should I group it? Before, I went and I came up with these groups, okay, for my categories. Are those the right groups for my data? Is there a different way? Someone else might have grouped it differently. Is there a right way to do it and a wrong way? Um, Not necessarily. There are lots of probably different groupings that are just as good. Maybe I'd go 0 to 10,000, 10 to 20, 20 to 30. Go in steps of 10,000 instead of 20,000. Why not? Why not go in steps of 25,000? That uh, Do they all have to be the same? Do I have to go 20,000 every time? That maybe I want to have some groups that are really small in terms of small steps and others that are in big steps. That maybe my first group is 0 to 40,000, and then I go 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, and then I go 80 to 100, 100 to 200, 200 and more. Why can't I have all kinds of different things? So when grouping data, uh, and warn you, if you end up doing a stats course, they'll talk about this and they'll tell you how you have to do it. Like there is one way. There isn't. That, like with most things, there is not just one way. There are many choices. You've got to not think of the mechanics, but think of the objective. Anything you do, always think about what are you trying to do? Why are you grouping it in the first place? Well, looking at 811 values is too much for my brain. Um, I want something that's more concise. I want it to be more compact. The other is looking at 811 values is so overwhelming. I have trouble extracting the information out of it. Is there a way of making it more compact, but still conveying all the information? Like I could have created one group, 0 to 650,000. That's concise. There's only one group, but it's not very informative. I could have compressed it into 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on up, and had 650 groups. No, that's not concise. Um, where's the trade-off? It's a judgment call. Don't have too many groups. I find once I start getting more than 10 groups, it's too busy. I get confused. But at the same time, if I got less than 5, I wonder, am I missing something important? I'd like it to have the right resolution. I'd like my groups not to be ambiguous. Most of the time, they're not. But like I would go from 0 to under 20,000, 20 to under 40, and so on. So if you give me a number, 17,512. Oh, it goes in this group. I know which group it goes into. Sometimes groups are not well defined. If I had 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and someone picks 20, are they in the first group or the second group? How do I decide? So the endpoints have got to be unambiguous, that it's clear, oh, they go in the first group or no, they go in the second group. I should include all the data, which is problematic with that 650 that's so big, but we can address that. But don't leave anybody out initially because we're just trying to summarize it. I say use nice numbers. That there are some numbers we're comfortable with. We like steps of 2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, steps of 5, steps of 10 or 25. Think about currencies and different countries. We have uh, in terms of paper money, we've got a $5 bill, a $10 bill, a $20 bill, a 50, 100. They don't go in nice increments necessarily, but these are nice numbers. We don't have a $17 bill. We don't have a $3 bill. It makes things awkward. Generally, um, we want values that are multiples of 2, 5, 10, 25. So pick nice numbers. Uh, and some textbooks will tell you, oh, take your smallest value, largest value, you wanted 10 groups, divide that difference by 10, and that's how they should split. But when you divide by 10, you may end up getting funny decimals or something, some ugly numbers. We don't want that. It's harder to read. It's harder to process numbers that are not nice round ones. And if you think back when students reported their expected salary, they tended to go in increments of about $5,000 or $10,000 because those are comfortable numbers. Uh, most of the time, we like groups of equal size. So the groups I had before went in steps of 20. And that is often easier to compare different groups because they're the same size groups. Okay? Um, that Now here I made a mistake with compared to the table I had before. My very high I wanted to be 80 to 120, which is a bigger group than the others that were steps of only 20,000. Uh, that the We've got to watch things in that as to do we need that or not. Sometimes it makes sense to have different sizes, but if you can get away with having them all of the same size, then that works better. If you want to satisfy all of these types of guidelines, and they're just guidelines, they're not hard and fast rules, these are recommendations to you, then very often our first group is going to be under 20,000, just as low as you want. The last group is 100,000 above or $120,000 and above. So the last groups may have no ending point. They're groups of flexible size to them. But generally the ending groups there aren't many people fall into the ending groups, or not a lot of data fits there. In Excel, it calls those groups bins, and it's a piece of jargon they use. And when I'm defining them, I only need to define one end of the bin because uh, if I had my bins, just for simplicity, if I said 0 to 20, 20 to 40, the 20 hits on both. That the end of one bin is the start of the next one. So if I know the end value of each bin, I can figure out how they're grouped. And this is just the way VLOOKUP worked when I group things. I only needed to know the end of a group. Regrettably, for reasons I cannot explain, with histogram, it defines bins in terms of the top end of the group. VLOOKUP defines them in terms of the bottom end of the group. So with VLOOKUP, we used 0 for the first group because it started at 0. The second group started at 20,000. And so that was the value we used. And the third group started at 40. In defining them in Excel, it's going to go the other way. So if I wanted the second group to really start at 20, then I should tell that the first group ends at 19,999. That's an ugly number. I'm going to use 20. And I'm going to come up with different things. I ended up using a width of 10,000 to do this, and I had bins up to 120, and it's going to create a group that's above that. And do I have a picture of it? Okay, so in my lookup table sheet, I created this thing here. So this represents 0 up to 10. This is above 10,000 up to 20, above 20 up to 30, and so on. This one is above 11 and up to 12, or sorry, above 110 up to 120, and that's the way I'm going to define it. The last group, above 120, it has no top end. So actually, I don't put a number in there because there's no upper limit. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into data analysis. I got 5 minutes. I had just barely enough. I'm going to click on histogram. I'll do this in a second. It's going to have a dialog box, a pop-up window. I'll need to tell them where the data is, where the bins are. Do I have labels for my variables? We'll see that. Where do I want to put it? Do I want to put it somewhere on the same sheet or on a different sheet? And what do I want to do with it? And I'm going to ask for chart output. Okay. So let's go do that. So here's my data set. Okay. I'm looking at salary. So I'm going to go over to data analysis. I'm going to go to histogram. Now I've already got some junk in here. Let me take this out. This was stuff that I was playing with before. So if you solve a rule 4, it tends to remember what the last thing was you were doing. All right. So I want the salary data. Salary data is, let me just put this up. I'm going to type it in. I can select it or I can type it. I know it's in column L. And I'm going to go from row 1. I put a colon in here. That's the starting value, the ending value. The last one is in row 812. Okay. My bins, I've got over here, I hope. Ooh, where is it? Eh, I thought it was there. Somehow I lost it. I'll type it again. I'm going to have to go back out of this. I wonder what happened. Maybe I grabbed the wrong sheet. And, uh-oh, I'm out of time. Okay, it says I am, I think. This is my shortcut for doing this. Oh, I didn't put in enough zeros here. 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120. That work? There we go. So I've got my stuff. So I go data analysis, histogram. This is going to be L1 to L812. This is going to be tables. I'm going to grab all of this. I have labels. I have words at the top. That's what it means by labels. I'm going to put my output in a new sheet. Okay. And I want chart output. I click OK. Good, worked. Yeah. So what you see here is it's done a count of how many fit into each group. It created a final group called more. Above 120,000, there are 9 values. It gives me this as a chart. Frequency is on the vertical scale. It gives me a title, so I could rename that salary. Um, I don't. I already know its frequency. This is detail I don't need, so I can take it out, and I get the sort of chart here. And this we would call a histogram. If you want to change this label, you can go in and change that as well. That's a very basic histogram. In practice, and you'll see this in a stats course, it's something I'm less worried about. I know what this is trying to represent as groups, excuse me, that in practice, histograms generally have no gaps between them. So if this is representing over here from 20 up to 40, then, or 20 to 30, should I say, I shouldn't have holes in here. So you can fix that. Click on any of the bars, right click on it. There's a thing called Format Data Series, and it gives me some options. It says there are gaps. I don't want any gaps, so I'll put a 0 in there. I hit OK, get that out of the way. And there, this looks like a bumpy bell curve, okay, that you can go up, you go down, but it's got a long tail on the right. So it's not quite a nice bell. And these guys here, watch out. This represents 120 all the way to 650,000. So it only does it as a column chart in Excel. That's what they call it, a column. And in practice, no, this column should be much, much, much wider. So watch out about the guys at the end in that regard. Okay, I'm over time. So there, that's the way I was supposed to get it. And I just reformatted it. So watch out though. Don't get distracted by these guys. With this chart here, this is the same one. I stretched my vertical axis. Okay. I found it a square looking picture is sometimes easier to look at than one that's stretched too wide or stretched too tall. So you may want to stretch it different ways. You get slightly different perspectives. This one, I found it easier to have it stretched a little bit. That it's how your eyes work on interpreting. If you wanted to do comparisons, get rid of the outliers, that's hard to do. Excel statistics function, data analysis function, ignores filters. So you can go in there, do filter on the salary, go back, do it again, and build your histogram. You're going to get the same result. The only way you can do it if you're comparing groups or filtering things out is to actually do a filter, copy, and paste. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like if I wanted to compare arts, business, and science. And so I'm going to zip through this. We're going to show a different way. I'm not going to make you do this on the assignment. And there's a slick trick to do this later in the course. I did a filter on arts, copied that whole column from my spreadsheet, and pasted it into a new sheet. I went back, changed the filter to business, copied, pasted. Changed the filter to science, copied, pasted. I went back and did give me a histogram for this column, and I got this picture. Give me a histogram for business. I got this picture. Give me a histogram for science. I got another picture. So you'll see they're similar. They're hard to compare. I didn't close up the gaps and that sort of thing, but it's awkward comparing them. Notice as well the scales. This goes from 0 to 60, 0 to 80, 0 to 40. So although the pictures are all similar, their vertical scales are different. If I tried to put them all together, Did I do that? So put all the frequencies in a table. You can, if you've used charts in Excel, and this isn't important, I'm not making you do this, I'm just showing you what I could do. This is what's called a clustered column chart. So the blue is arts, orange is business, gray is science, and I'm trying to compare, are they different? Not just in average, but just the whole pattern. Because I don't have that many science students compared to the others, their columns are small. Oh, because I don't have as many of them. But I want to compare shape, and I've got different scales in a sense for each of these. So I've got to change my scale. And we create what we call relative frequencies, percentages. And there are a lot of problems where we need to scale our data generally as percentages. This will come up as a big topic later on in the course. So what I did was I copied that table. The spreadsheet is posted on Top Hat with these revisions made. And so this is the percentage of students in each group. So for each group, it adds to 100%. And now I can look at the pattern and I can see the arts bars are to the left. Business doesn't have many at the bottom, not compared to arts. And then it has some big ones over here in the middle and out to the big. Look at science. Science students have very, very high expectations of earnings. They're the ones that expect to be earning over $100,000. They have very, very high salary, or at least this group did. But this comes out now. It's a very busy chart. Uh, I, in practice, would normally take out my percentage signs. It's clutter. I don't have decimals. I, I don't care if this is 3.1 or 3.4 or 2.7. It's 2 digits is as precise a number as I'll normally look at. We'll talk about that as we go through the course. So these distributions, these histograms, and it goes back to Malcolm's comment, and I think it was Malcolm, about bell curves. Bell curves show us, or these graphs show us, three things. What are the small numbers? What are the middle numbers? What are the large numbers? And are they spread way out? Are they clustered together? They also show us, do they lean to the left or lean to the right? Look at these ones. Notice I got a tail here to the right and bunching more in the middle. That So we get classic shapes. This is your famous bell curve, and there's a lot of reasons behind it. It's a very rich area of study, this bell curve. It's important. For grade data, they tend to be this way because you can't get more than 100%, and 50% maybe here, and we get the stragglers down at the bottom. So it's like a bell curve that someone whacked it and pushed it over to the right. If I'm looking at financial data, generally we have, this is the typical folks over here, but then we have the rich folks, and they can get very, very, very rich. So they have a long tail, we say, off to the right. And it's important to understand how your data, we say it's skewed. Is it pushed to the left, pushed to the right? These are important general features of the data that you're trying to get a handle on. So anyway, I'm way, way, way over time. I'm sorry about that. The slides, I'll have them turned on in a minute, and I'll post the video just after lunch. You guys take care, and say keep looking on Top Hat. I should be getting that first assignment posted soon, plus some supplementary material will get posted by the end of the week that may help guide you through the assignment. But we got to go. I got another class in a minute. Bye.